Hello and welcome along to another RTÉ Rugby podcast. It is URC's semi-finals week. We're down to the final four. Munster, Glasgow Warriors, the Bulls and Leinster. An all-Irish final at Thomond Park is still potentially on the cards. A lot of rugby to be played before we can get there, though. To talk through all of the burning issues of the week, I've got Jackman and Johne Murphy for company with me this morning. Fellas, how are we doing?
All good. Thank you.
I suppose we'll get straight into it. We'll start democratically. Munster top seeds. We'll give them first billing on the podcast. 23-7 winners against the Ospreys on Friday night at Thomond Park. They host Glasgow this Saturday at Thomond Park again in the last four, 6 p.m. kickoff. To start with their quarter-final win, before we look at Glasgow, two brilliant tries in the first 4 minutes of that game. We thought we were going to have a hell of a match at that point. It ended up being a fairly uneventful 80 minutes, to be honest, Bernard. But at this stage of the season, no real harm in that, is there?
No, there's not. And it's not just the quarterfinal stage and beyond. I think for the last 5 or 6 weeks, Munster have been talking about cup rugby and just winning games or getting what you need out of it. And I think they'll actually feel really, really happy with how they managed that game and how they played the exact tactics for what was needed on the day, because it was pretty clear after that first burst that the Ospreys had the ability to do a number on Munster at the breakdown, and the defensively they were pretty solid, and just Munster were getting slow ball. So once they got that 2-score lead, they just punished Ospreys with every turnover that they got, or every penalty, just kicking them back into their own half. And I thought it was probably one of the most impressive displays for Dennis Leamy's defence that we've seen, and I know statistically it's obviously tracking really well, but it just looks so comfortable for that second half, being able to defend high up the field, and you never really feared that the Ospreys were going to break out, and it would have been very demoralising for them.
Yeah, and Johnny, like on that point where, as Bert said, like the defence, they give up their try in the first 4 minutes, and in fairness, it took a really, really clever chip over the top and a couple of lovely little passes to rip them open. But, you know, scoreless for the next 76 minutes is obviously great as well. But what I actually did enjoy was the reaction afterwards from players and coaches, where the players, when they were doing their interviews immediately on the full-time whistle on the sideline, they were a little bit frustrated that they hadn't scored a couple more tries and that they'd found themselves shut out a couple of times close to the line. But then on the flip side afterwards, Graham Rowntree was kind of saying it was just a job done kind of a game. It was get in there, win the arm wrestle, ultimately keep Ospreys at arm's length for 40 to 50 minutes, and just slowly build your way through with no major fuss.
Yeah, exactly. I think on their try, particularly with how teams are defending now in that kind of 13-2 high up the pitch, that area in particular where the ball is in the other half, just on the very close to the halfway line, the back three have to manage the 50-22, so that space, that kind of triangle in behind is quite open, and if you have a very well executed chip into that space, it's very, very hard to defend. So you give them that one, but Bert has already said it, this is knockout rugby, it's just about winning. They controlled it very well. I think that frustration was clear to see after the game from the players, but the coaching staff, again, they just move on, and they have all their momentum. I suppose it was, they just kept going, very similar to kind of Northampton at the weekend in the Premiership final. All the players after in the interviews, they were saying, they couldn't believe how poorly they played, but they got over the line and they got the win. That's all that matters here for this, and it just keeps the momentum going. With someone like Nankyville coming back in, hopefully this weekend, that'll add a bit of power and punch to them as well. So look, all in all, job done, move on, and into a home semi-final.
Yeah, and obviously, like, they were dealing as well with a 6-day turnaround, Johnny, from the last regular season game. And I wasn't down at it last night, but I saw the quotes from Graham Rowntree afterwards, where he did kind of bring up the fact that he thought it was a little bit odd that the top seed, the team that had earned the top seed for the knockout stages, only got a 6-day turnaround to their quarter final. But then I suppose, excuse me, the flip side is, they were first up last Friday. They were able to put their feet up on Saturday and watch everything else unfold. And now they're in a situation now coming into this semi-final at home against Glasgow where they have that extra day compared to everyone else.
Yeah, I think, there was, they did at times look a bit tired in the game, but they had a full weekend to recover, just watch, see how everything unfolded. Those 2 days are massive this time of the year. It's been a very, very long season for them. But then, they don't necessarily have the numbers in, the kind of time in their legs either because of what happened in Champions Cup. So those 2 extra days will really, really stand to them. And they know Glasgow really well. There's a bit of history there, even going back to my time, in terms of knockout rugby. And that was a rivalry that had kind of been simmering away for a while, and interesting to see kind of Wig's comments, yesterday around kind of some things that they changed up in the defensive system because of the 2 previous meetings against them. He name checks that 20 where they were 28, I think it was 28-0 up, and they come out in the second half. So that is a rivalry that is very much there, and there's a historical one associated to that, and a lot of the guys like Pete and Zebo and Murr, they all they were all part of when that rivalry started. So it's going to be a fairly tasty affair, I'd say.
Yeah, let's stay on that point then, because that was one bit I did want to bring up, Bernard. Like I think over the course of right through like the Celtic League stuff going way back like 10-15 years, even pre URC and everything, Munster and Glasgow has actually generally been the best cross-border rivalry across this league. And you're thrown in Champions Cup meetings as well down the years. There's always been a good bit of niggle and a bit of spiciness every time these two teams played. They seem to rub each other up the wrong way. I was listening to the BBC Scotland Rugby pod earlier in the week, and they were talking about Munster and Glasgow straight after the Glasgow and Stormers match the other day, and I think it was Peter Wright was saying like he hates Munster. He cleared up. He's talking specifically in rugby terms. These two teams just don't like each other down the years, and it's always made for really, really entertaining stuff.
Yeah, but that's what we want, and that's probably what the Premiership in England has, a little bit more of that rivalry. Obviously, this is still quite a new league, but well, the South Africans are obviously new to it. But Glasgow and Munster have had some phenomenal battles, and there is an edge there, and that's what we want. We want more of those. We want more of those to grow the league, and it's interesting. The Scots saying that they hate Munster. And I think Wiggs is quite a. Damien Landay was I don't give him too much airtime, but he was saying, "Oh, the Irish aren't emotional, they're not an emotional race, whatever." But Jesus, I disagree with him, and I think Munster are always at the best when there's a bit of an emotional charge there, and I think that's why Wig is bringing it to the fore. I don't think it was probably harder to get to that place for Ospreys. Last weekend it was a game Munster definitely would have expected to win. The fans, I felt they would win, particularly when they scored early. Whereas there's jeopardy here, and in fairness to Munster, like they got into trouble against Ulster. They would have wrecked their home advantage, their seeding, and they found a way to win it. And I think they've won enough close games, reaching even Edinburgh away.
Yeah.
That if it gets it tight and tense the last 10 minutes, they won't. They'll fancy themselves the ability to be able to find a way to close it out.
Yeah, and that's something they've really actually worked on over the course of the year as well, where I think probably up until January, they were actually losing a lot of games in the last 20 minutes, but they seem to have righted that wrong. Staying on the rivalry side of things though, Johnny, and as you said, like this bit of niggle between the two teams, this goes right back to when you were playing, like between 2010 through to 2015. Obviously, they beat you in the final and stuff like that. Was there a particular game where things just started to heat up ever so slightly, or was this just one of these things that kind of year on year just got a little bit spicier?
Well, I think it kind of started with their move to their new stadium now. And it was guys like kind of Ali Kellogg and those, and when they were going after the likes of Paul and Dunica and Leams to an extent, like those guys kind of built up that time, and it just developed over kind of 2-3 years when Gregor kind of transformed Glasgow into a real consistent side, and one that we're pushing for semi-finals, finals. They beat us in 2015. They beat us in the semi-final in 2014, and there was so much in those games, a lot of verbals, and outside of probably Leinster at that time, it was one of the most kind of intense fixtures that you could play, and that you'd look at, particularly in my last 3 years, that you'd look and go, I want to play in that. Personally, I didn't have a great amount of luck. I remember in my last year I got an opportunity, and first defensive thing I had, I ended up getting busting my nose and having to come off by a stray elbow by one of my own players. It's difficult. It is a difficult place to travel to, and it's just been built up, and it's great to have that spice in it, and then there's obviously so much history around kind of the game after, when Axel passed away, that game, back to Tyler's try, Earlsey's red card, like it's layered and layered and layered and layered. And Glasgow will come fancying themselves. Like they're a really good side. The centre pair, Tuil Prado, like you can see what he can create. Like sets up a try last weekend where they're going backwards, bouncing ball, and then just out of nothing, he creates something. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to this one. To be fair, both semi-finals have a bit of spice in it, but I think this one will be really good. And I think Bert has said this before, be interesting to see what the weather does, because Munster are probably now a side that, prefer a dry ball, and they want a good quick surface, good quick ball, and be able to play. So that has changed, since Prendy has come in and changed up the attack a bit.
On Glasgow then, Birch, as a rugby team and what their strengths are. I thought they were very, very impressive with the way they navigated that game at the weekend against the Stormers, where like the weather looked a bit crazy, looked very, very windy over there. I think there was a lot of rain in and out during the match as well. And just kind of, I think early midway through the second half, it looked like the Stormers were starting to hit their purple patch, and they just managed to hold it off and finish strong with those 2 tries in the last 10-12 minutes. And ultimately had a nice bit of scoreboard separation in it at the end. Like, they are a serious team.
No, they're a good side, and they probably have the most elaborate attacking shape of any team. I really like Munster's attack, but I think Glasgow's is probably, it's slightly different, more layered, and they're actually very happy to go really deep to try and get you on the edge, and Tupolatu is massive for them. They all understand it. I think Nigel Carlin has come in there, but it's and added his style to it. But obviously Franco Smith has come in as head coach, and he's given them the license to play. They lost their way a little bit under Danny Wilson, and they were kind of playing without real confidence. Do you remember was it the semi-final against Leinster or
quarterfinal
in the RDS? Like,
yeah.
it was a really, really poor, and it cost Danny his job. It was a really, really poor performance, and they were just playing without real life. The confidence has gone out, so that's back now, and they are a dangerous side. They're for a team who are so elaborate in attack, one of their biggest weapons is their maul.
Yeah.
So they don't. When you look at their stats, you go, oh, they're very much a forward-based team, but they only really are when they kick to the corner. Everything else is fast and slick movement, good lines of running, good ball transfer. But when they get you in the corner, they're lethal. They're lethal, and that's a Munster for Munster discipline. I think all week, not giving them those opportunities, and I do think as well part of that is actually territory. So they may use Crowley and Casey and even Zebo if he's fit, just to make sure that if they do concede penalties, they're far enough away that they get another shot to defend it, rather than actually be 5 yards out. So yeah, I'm down there. I'm really looking forward to, hopefully it's going to be a sellout and the place will be hopping, because I think the Munster fans and the Munster team deserve a big knockout game at home, and the Ospreys wasn't that match. It was a Friday night, but this is that match, I think.
Yeah, and like on the Maul stuff, Johnny, like you only just have to take a quick look at the stats. Johnny Matthews, their hooker, has 14 tries this season. When they met down in Cork in early December, Munster won 40-29. Glasgow scored 5 tries. All 5 of those were straight off the Maul. So like the threat is staring you in the face there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, he's like a young Bernard Jackman in Clontarf. But they yeah, and I think at that time Munster were, we were talking about Munster struggling kind of defending at the Maul, and it was a consistent team over those couple of weeks. They've sorted that out, but they really need to be on that. And I do think that the right and left footed options, keeping them down the pitch, trying to make sure that the line that they are conceding penalties is the far side. If they are going to chase breakdowns and do that they manage that really, really well. So their kicking strategy is going to be very important. And Zebo's left foot will hopefully have that's another layer to his game that he can actually bring in when he's put in the right positions. Crowley, very important to that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with from a defensive perspective. But as Bert has already said, allowing them entries, not allowing them entries is going to be really, really important, and easy entries at that.
And Bert, you mentioned the kick chase as well a couple of minutes ago, and I have found it really really interesting how in the last couple of years, anytime we've spoken to Shane Daly and Calvin Nash, they've been talking about the way Munster are attacking, and they say it's they've really, really enjoyed how they're doing so much more than just chasing kicks and putting people under pressure. And while they're doing all that stuff really, really well in attack, the likes of Calvin Nash and Shane Daly are probably as good as they have ever been now at the kick chase side of things. Like they really are excellent at it, and I think you're seeing Craig Casey, as a kicker as well in general, has come on a lot in the last few months. That's a really, really impressive part of their game over the last few months.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously when they did a lot of it with Johan, we were critical of it, and it wasn't necessarily as successful, because I think their kick chase is better, but also it's because they have the capacity to run as well. It's making it harder for the defensive side to cover all options.
Sorry to interrupt, but I suppose like it kind of adds to it now, where if they do manage to win ball back off that kick chase, their counter attack is so good that it's very, very
their transition.
To watch.
Yeah, no, 100%, but it's definitely a big strength for them. And again, like that's what they looked at. I think the only area that they would be a little bit concerned about is they looked a little bit light on power close in against the Ospreys. So they had multiple opportunities, like pick and go. And the Ospreys, okay, you could argue that the Ospreys cheated, but I think they've tidied up that area, because that will become critical. If you don't score, if you kick to the corner, don't score from the Maul, or you take a quick tap 5 yards out, you need to convert those in knockout rugby. But the rest of their game, and go back to your point, their variety of contestable kicks, the accuracy of the contestable kicks, the quality of the kick chase, as Johnny said, the ability to transition into attack is good. I think their phase attack is good. The only other area, and it's not a weakness for Munster because usually it's very good, but just in terms of what to work on from Saturday or Friday night was just that breakdown, being able to create quick ball regardless of how muscular Glasgow are defensively. And I think that there's definitely a case that maybe the referee could have been a little bit harder on Ospreys, but I think Munster would say, look, we got to take it into our own hands here. We got to make sure we shift bodies or we win that race. And Casey or Murray aren't in there digging for the ball, because if Munster get quick ball, they can ask questions of anybody.
Yeah, just on the kick chase stuff, like that's a legacy from kind of Felix and then the likes of Andrew Conway, who transformed their games and made it one. I know that was the way Munster were playing at the time, But the ability that's a non-negotiable now, being able to contest, particularly, a lot of back three players in my time where, your practice was on receiving kicks rather than kick chase. And that kind of changed the game a bit in terms of how people were playing at the time. And that's huge. Like I suppose it's a talentless task. What a lot of people would go through. It's a battle start, if you want to use Rassi's phrase, that you get up, you win that ball, and it requires no talent, just work rate, and communication in the line to make sure that you're not, that there is some form of D inside that. So that's just a non-negotiable for any back three player in Munster. But the thing on transition is when they do get it back, like they are, they're unbelievable in that transition. And then also at the breakdown, I think it's something that probably Leinster struggle with Toulouse, that they have to learn how to play. They have to be better at playing what the referee is seeing there. That to be fair to Ospreys, they were so dogged in that position. They were dogged on their own line. That they have to, cheat's the wrong phrase, but they have to figure out how they can probably cheat better and make sure that, the guys who are getting in over that ball, that, they're not slowing it down, so that the speed of ball is vitally important. So playing the referee is going to be really, really important, and managing it so that he's falling on your side, not the other side.
Definitely. You mentioned the power there, Bernard, like that power close to the line. And we were talking to Graham Rowntree yesterday, and we were asking specifically at the time about Gavin Coombs, and it was interesting. Rowntree said to us, I have the quote here, I've not yet finalised selection for this week, or indeed our bench split, but I think the ability to bring on forwards like him against Glasgow around that 50-minute mark or even earlier will be vital to us this week. Reading between the lines there, it sounds like we might be going back to Gavin Coombs on the bench, but also I think possibly 6-2. And I suppose they do have to kind of think of a couple of things there about how they, what are your contingency plans in the back row? Do you think that they do need that extra bit of power on the bench this week?
Look, it's unfortunate for Coombs because I actually thought he had a good game off the start, but
you're talking about the impact and like
no, like 100%.
Yeah,
so I think it's unfortunate for him because, like, he obviously, you'd imagine he wants to start, but I do think it's best for Munster he comes off the bench this week. I just think he has more impact than say Kendellen or and maybe even John Hodnett, who I rate both of them really highly, but I just think Coombs in the run up to this has been excellent off the bench, and the challenge they're going to have is just at the moment with Tom Ahern being out as well, with Joey being out. Like if you could go 6-2 easier with Joey, if because obviously he can play, Crowley can play centre, Joey can play fullback.
But Joey's out.
Yeah, Joey's out. Yeah, so like their bench impact is getting harder for them to have bench impact. Obviously, you can bring Jaeger on, you can bring John Ryan on, but Coombs and Tom Ahern for me. Or if John Klein or Dogbo was available, I'd go with Snyman off the bench and bring him on at 45 minutes. But I think he'd have to start. But yeah, I think the bench impact's been so big for them. I think Coombs, because of what he's done off the bench, probably is the real ace in the pack there for them to bring on late. And he has the power, obviously, close in as well, but even more probably relevant, against tireder bodies later on.
He was very interesting, Johnny. We were asking him about how over the last couple of months he's had to sell that idea to some of the regular starters, obviously, that, I don't want you for the first 50 minutes now, I want you for the last 30. And I would imagine as a coach, that's a difficult sell to some players who are used to playing pretty much 80 minutes every week.
Yeah, it is, but you have to have that buy-in by everyone that, this is a process associated to winning a cup. And I think when you lay it out and you explain, and it's not like that, the thing is, like, he goes to his bench early, so it's not like they're only getting 20 or 25. Like, they are, he's making changes early as 44 minutes, so it is, you're getting a huge win. Bert has already said that when you set, the sell is important, but do you want to be on the pitch when we lift the cup at the end, or do you want, so it's one of those things that they've managed to get right. I do think, and agree with Birch on that. It's the injuries, or how they manage the injuries that they have, and getting that balance right of having that without kind of taking away from your starting team is going to be interesting to see on the team selection. And if they go 6-2, who's going to cover with Joey and Stanley, who's going to cover 10. It's a big ask for someone like Butler to come off the bench, and manage a game. So it's who comes in that spot if they do go 6-2, or what they look at. So be interesting to see on Friday what they come up with.
And then final point before we move on to Bulls and Leinster, looks like all going to plan. Alex Nankivell back this week, and having added Diarmuid Barron back into the bench last week as well. It's just a nice time burner to be getting some of these bodies back.
Yeah, no, it's massive. I think Nankivell and Frisch together, they've built up a really good combination, and I think that was also a little bit of the issue last week. It wasn't anything against Sean O'Brien, but they didn't really have that punch that Nankivell gives them, and obviously defensively he's a leader for them. So that would be a big boost. Obviously Haley came back last week as well, so that's a help. And I think Zebo he wasn't injured, so he's fit. So they have options, but just around the 10 area, if anything happened, Jack Early, as Johnny said, it's a big ask if Butler's on the bench, or maybe Connor has to come in at 10. I'm not sure what they're going to do there. Obviously, Scannell picking up an injury a couple of weeks ago, they're just a little bit light there.
It is it's really interesting with Nankivell, Johnny, because I think the first game he played, first game of the URC this season, I'm almost certain he was only in the country a few days after coming in from New Zealand, finishing up the season there. But from day one, he just seems to be a player he's just got it, both in terms of the rugby and, I suppose, just being involved in the club.
Yeah, 100%. He's been a leading light for them throughout the season, and he's massive. His battle with Tui Pilato, you could even go as far as it could essentially decide the game. It's going to be an absolute, ding dong battle with what they offer for both sides. It's going to be really interesting to see. But he is massive for them to get back, and we said it a couple of weeks ago, if they could get him back semi-final, final stage, they have a real chance, because he's the heartbeat. It's not just his carries, he's also well capable of distributing, but it's his breakdown work, defensively and an attack. He's been one of their star players all year.
I'll hold off on a verdict until right at the end of the podcast. We'll do both games at once. So that is Munster against the Glasgow Warriors, 6:00 kickoff at Thomond Park on Saturday. Turning our attention now to the Bulls against Leinster, 3:00 kickoff Irish time at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. I'll start off with a quote from Robin McBride yesterday. Bernard, he was doing Leinster media, and he said, "I would put the Bulls down as favourites, yeah. When you consider the number of internationals in their squad, the proud home record they've got, they've obviously had a better preparation time than we've had with regards to playing a home game after Benetton last week. I think the odds are stacked in their favour." Do you agree with them?
No, I don't agree, but whatever way you want to twist it. I just don't think... Look, Leinster can choose whatever narrative they want, but it's hard to play the poor mouth when you have the resources and the players that he has. The Bulls have done a decent job recruiting, but I had a coffee with Jake White after the Leinster game in the RDS with Leo actually, and he really needs more players. He needs and he'd be hoping that the Saru would try and encourage more of those players playing outside of South Africa who are Springboks to come back, because he feels that they need that strength and depth and need that quality to be able to go toe to toe with the top Irish teams. And the Stormers, the Sharks, the Lions this year, have all struggled to be at the very, very top. But the Bulls are obviously the last team standing. They got to the quarterfinal of the European Cup. obviously on form, they're the best of them. But I don't know. I think I didn't see Robin, but I'd say he struggled to keep a straight face saying that. You know what I mean? I don't think it's true, and that's not being disrespectful to the Bulls. Obviously, the hardest part about the Bulls away is the altitude. You know, realistically, they're just not firing at the moment. You know, they have strength, they have a good kicking game, but I don't think they're where they need to be. I think Jake is still very much mid project, and like they're quite lucky to get through to this game. I mean, Benetton, that's like I'm not, you know, on recent form, like even on recent form, Leinster losing to Toulouse, there was still a lot of that element of that performance that you would say it's top quality. You know what I mean? Like it was a top quality contest. Then they beat Connacht with a second string quite easily, and then they were reasonably comfortable against Ulster. You know, so Leinster's form compared to the Bulls' form, for me, as I said, Bulls. It's not that long ago. Bulls lost to Munster in Pretoria, and then last week I thought it was a very flawed performance from a Benetton side who are decent, but they shouldn't be in the same level as Leinster or the Bulls as a franchise, you know, historically.
Yeah, and every time Treviso got into the 22, the Bulls, they looked like they were going to score, you know, and they did. They converted a lot of opportunities there. And you look at, you know, particularly the 10s try, you look at the final, the tackle that he walks through, like he kind of half pumps inside. It's just a basic carry by the 10, you know. So it is, I think their defense was, you always felt they were probably going to get there, but watching it, you know, and the amount of possession Treviso had, I think if they give that same amount of possession to Leinster, they could be in trouble. I think, you know, Bert's already said it, Robin's probably just deflecting there, really just trying to change the narrative. But in general, like I thought they were only okay. Like they found a way to win last week, but when you look and you analyze some of their defense, particularly in the 22, it wasn't great. Like it really wasn't that great. And I think is Aaron out this weekend as well. So is he injured? Yeah. So like they've lost a couple now. They do have a very good team and stuff, but yeah, it's yeah. I just didn't think they were that great last weekend.
Yeah. So like you've Curtly Aaron set out this week, in addition to Marco van Staden and Kane Moody. That's like three very impressive Springboks out of that squad. And like on that defense, like you were talking about. So of the results here, 30-23 over Benetton. The week before, 26-14 against a Sharks team who really actually had nothing to play for. Their final had been the week before. 56-35 against Benetton the week before that. 40-34 win against Glasgow. 61-24 against the Ospreys. And then the 27-22 defeat to Munster. Even if you look across those few games, Johnny, where they have won, they're conceding a lot of points along the way. Like 40-34 against Glasgow, that's a shootout. Same, like 61-24 against the Ospreys, 35 points against Benetton the week after that then as well. If you're going to into a game against Leinster and you turn it into gunslinging, it's hard to see you coming out the right side of that.
Yeah, I definitely think that. Like if they give Leinster the same opportunities that they've given teams like, you know, what's that, an average of nearly 4 tries a game, you know, what they're conceding over the last 4 or 5 games, like that's, you know, with Leinster's defense and where that's at, I don't think they can go into a shootout. They have to try and tighten it up a bit. They have to, you know, they have to make sure that they don't give entries into the 22, because that's where, you know, when people get into multi-phase against them in the 22, they do struggle. You know, teams that lift the tempo when they get into that 22, they just struggle. And some of the tries last week for Benetton were easy, you know. So yeah, they're gonna have to tighten up their D, because we all know, like, and Leinster showed it last week, you know, their attack is okay. It probably wasn't where everyone thought or where it needed to be against Toulouse, but you know, they can score from anywhere, and if they get into the 22, they're probably one of the, if not the most dangerous sides in that area.
Yeah, and the Bulls learned that lesson the hard way at the RDS a couple of months ago. Was it like 14-12 the Bulls at half time and finished 47-14 there or thereabouts. The question mark over Leinster then, Bernard, is that this is all a bit of an unknown at the moment. They're not used to playing big knockout games away from home. I was looking back through it there. The last knockout game they played away from home was the quarterfinals of the Champions Cup in 2022 against Leicester Tigers. Like, against a decent Leicester team. I know they won the Premiership that season, but Leinster were pretty much always going to be winning that game. La Rochelle in 2021 was the other away game before that. Then you're going back to the 2019 Pro 14 final, which officially was a neutral venue in Celtic Park in Glasgow, but obviously they were playing Glasgow, so I suppose in effect you could call it an away game. They are out of their comfort zone, where they're very, very used to having everything on their own terms in these knockout games. And a lot of these players as well then obviously haven't played high stakes games in South Africa over the last few years, or at altitude as well.
No, they haven't, and I think that hopefully will help their cause. I think, like, I'd love a Munster Leinster final. Obviously, I think that'd be a brilliant spectacle for Irish rugby, and we'd see the majority of the best players in Ireland going head to head before Ireland go to South Africa. But I think it's set up for Leinster. It's obviously not as easy as you would like, but they've had the easier routes and they haven't closed it out. So I think, given the disappointment of the last three finals in Europe, obviously last year in the URC semi-final, to do it the hard way would actually be good for them. It'd be good for them in terms of really them feeling that they have the capacity to close out games, and I think they do. But unfortunately, they've just lost a lot of big ones, 4 big ones in a row. The Munster semi-final last year, and the Toulouse final, the 2 La Rochelle finals. So, I think it's exactly what this squad probably need, and it'll also have a bounce for Ireland as well, because so many of those Leinster players will be playing for Ireland in Pretoria. So it's a good thing for them to do and get over. And you mentioned all the numbers, the Bulls. Like, I thought against Glasgow they had so many chances to just put that game away, and just their defense and their game management was poor. It's not on the back of last weekend. I'm saying that Leinster should really expect to win. It's based on the last 6 or 7 performances from the Bulls, where I just see so many flaws. And if you can fix them, of course, it's going to be hard, but they're not really going in banging on form.
And what Bernard said there as well, Johnny, was interesting. Obviously, where this is all happening 3 weeks out from when Ireland are playing a test match at Loftus Versfeld against the Springboks. The opposition is going to be quite different that day, but this is if we're putting our Ireland hats on and we're being neutral, not kind of supporting Leinster even on this, it's a nice little trial run.
Yeah, it is, and I think the Bulls are trying their best they can to kind of fill out, to fill the stadium this weekend. It is essentially a lead up to, as I say, to those test matches. So it gives people an opportunity to get there, see that, and build it, and it can leave a sour taste in one side's mouth, who are going to be playing there in 3-4 weeks' time. But I think I agree with Birch. I think that doing this the hard way for Leinster, they really want to go and do this, and they have that chip on their shoulder now after after the Heineken Cup final, and they're just in a space where there's been a lot spoken about them. I think they can galvanize themselves, and I think this is actually the way they want to do it now. Well, it's the way they have to do it, but in terms of getting themselves back and getting a medal around their necks. But yeah, it's going to be a good one. But I think it is going to be interesting to see. They're going back down. A lot of those players are going back down, and will be going back down in 2 or 3 weeks. So they'll want to have that winning momentum with them.
Yeah, and that was I did pick up on that as well. Leinster were doing their media yesterday. It was McBride and Cian Healy was speaking as well, and it did come across like the message they were kind of telling themselves was they have to do things the hard way, because they've put themselves in this situation, because they haven't won their matches and they haven't secured their their top seeds like they always do. And, you know, this is something that they need to make the best of this situation. And even not even just for this weekend or trying to win the title this week, this week can be something that in 2-3 years' time can hopefully stand to the group.
Yeah, 100%. And look, at the reason they've often had softer draws is because of the strength of their squad. And Leo, in fairness, and his coach staff made a decision to gamble on trying to have everybody ready for Toulouse and to give up potentially a home run in the URC, to give Toulouse full crack. And obviously that didn't work, and now you've got to go and face the consequences of it. But like a lot of these big name players have had more breaks than some of the other players in other sides now, even though they've obviously had the 3 extra games in Europe. You know, they've had gap weeks in between, the 2 weeks in South Africa, etc. So they should be primed for it. And I do think a trophy this year will just calm everything down, because there is a lot of pressure on this team, and lifting trophies is great for the mind as well, and confidence. And obviously with RG and with Barrett coming in, then you could go again at Europe. Whereas to lose it either this weekend or next weekend in Munster, it does put more doubt in your mind that you have the ability to close out games, whether they're home or away.
What's that buzz like actually then, Johnny, as a player, where you're heading into these weeks where you don't know necessarily, are you going to be out training next week, you know?
It's excitement. You know, it's why, and it's alluded to in meetings all the time. You know, any finals that I would have played at Leicester or Munster was always, this is why you play the game. You play for this jeopardy. You play to be walking out and, you know, not being able to plan anything, you know, for next week or the week after. This is what you want to be. Everyone wants to be playing knockout rugby, and sometimes doing it the hard way is the best way to do it. You know,
The Munster last year.
Yeah, like, and look at what, you know, the kick that it gave them, and again, it as Bert said, it can give this team an opportunity to, in, you know, 6, 9 months, 12 months, 2, 3 years time, to go back and you look at kind of the Munster access stuff about what, you know, Wig said when Munster went to Bulls, you know, to start this run. They said, this was our time. This is what we did last year. This is what we're going to do this year. So this is Leinster's opportunity to have that and build that belief within the squad that they can do it the hard way in knockout rugby. But back to your question, this is why everyone plays rugby. You want to be walking out on these days. This is your opportunity to go grab something that, you know, you dream of. So yeah, it's one of excitement, and you just want to get to, you know, kick off time and put your best foot out there.
When they last met at the RDS a few months ago, Bulls gave Leinster a pretty torrid time in the first quarter, at least leading into the first half. I know Leinster, they navigated their way around it well in the second half, but at the scrum, Bulls really got on top of them. Bernard,
Yeah.
do you see that happening again this time around? I asked McBride about it yesterday, and he didn't seem to agree that the referee was seeing the right pictures. He said sometimes you do all the preparation, but ultimately being in a scrum is like walking into a casino. How did you see the scrums that day? And do you see?
No, I think, look, at the Bulls
did similar.
No, the Bulls did put pressure on them early days, and then I thought Leinster managed it very well. They actually changed the referee's mind and showed a lot of experience to do that. But I think when it was a proper 8v8 power contest, I thought the Bulls had dominance. Now, having said that, you know, Leinster's scrum against Toulouse was one of the big weapons they had. So it's not like they don't have the capacity there. But certainly, if you're Jake White, you're looking to show dominance there. But I think Leinster would be a little bit wiser to it, and I don't see that being the turning point. It's obviously an area they're going to be concerned about, but I think they have the players and the experience to be able to fix it.
Mm-hmm. The final point then, a selection call. Gary Ringrose, we're being told again, is fully fit and raring to go. Bernard, would you consider putting him in from the start this week, just to kind of sprinkle a little, just to sprinkle a little something different in there that we haven't got to see in the last couple of months? They do look like just throwing in something new and fresh would be ideal for them.
Yeah, 100%. And I just think the Bulls are quite aggressive defensively as well, with wings getting very narrow. You need a centre you need two centres ideally who can actually get that ball into space and get it over the top or out the back of that blitz. So I think they'll want to get him in the team. I think the Robbie Henshaw Ringrose partnership is the strongest. Osborne's done really well, but I think it's a better balance with Ringrose in. So I'd like to see him start if he's fit.
Johnny?
Yeah, I think so. And I think particularly with altitude and stuff, you're better off, someone coming back from injury, you're better off just go out and gas yourself, rather than, if something goes wrong and he has to come on in 10, 15 minutes and he's gassed, then with the altitude, it can be quite difficult. So I always like when someone comes back from injury that they get an opportunity and they can just go as long as they can. But I think the altitude factor is something that they'll be thinking of. Be tough on Jamie, and then they have to figure out the bench then. And obviously you're losing his left foot that has been very good over the while, and you're kind of mainly concentrating on James Lowe for that left foot option at the back. Obviously, if Jimmy's starting at 15, so you have to just manage your kind of kicking options a bit. But yeah, it'd be tough on Jamie, but it is their best centre pairing. And
Jimmy O'Brien actually as well. I'd like to mention him. He's just looked really, really sharp since coming back from injury, Bernard.
Yeah, he's been excellent, and I think Leinster will be less concerned about Hugo being away with him coming in. It gives him a shot to play in these big games. So yeah, he's just bounced back from injury so well. Obviously, he played the week before the final, didn't play in the final, but has just hit the ground running. And yeah, he's one of Leinster's brightest attacking threats at the moment. And
the last person I do want to mention, it would be remiss. We've spoken about him 2 weeks in a row and about transfers and stuff. But how much fun was Sam Prendergast when he came on off the bench? I know realistically that game was won, but there's something, Johnny, about seeing a young player coming on and just trying stuff and just kind of throwing caution to the wind a little bit.
Yeah, I actually sent Birch a message. I sent him a link of a thing he put up for Sam. We coached them in school together for a chip that he did in a semi-final that we played, and then a chip he did against the Irish 20s. I was like, you can add this to the reel. But yeah, look, he came on and played with freedom. He was everywhere, and I think that just shows what a performance can do to your confidence the week before, and being given the backup slot on the bench, it just gave him that confidence to go play. And even talking to him, he's like, I can't wait to get down to South Africa. And he's on that kind of crest of a wave now. And yeah, look, I'd love him to be able to come on and in the last kind of 20 minutes or so close the game out or show his skills, what he did this weekend in a real high pressure environment. He'll flourish. He will flourish in that space. But yeah, he's now, I was slagging him during the week, he's now become a meme or whatever you call it these days with his chip kick.
And that's part of it then.
It was actually it was very
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was very funny. You can hear the commentary on the thing, and they were like, "Oh, that was he just." And then one of the commentators goes, He did actually look for it." That's what made it better, I think.
But even Birch, aside from those bits of a player just having fun when the game is realistically won at that stage, he does look like the kind of player where if something was to happen, Ross Byrne 45 minutes into the match and it's a tight game, you wouldn't necessarily have much fear about him going on and having to steer Leinster through 35 minutes of close knockout rugby.
No, and in fairness, he's putting his name up there for selection every time he gets any minutes. I don't think he wasn't going to be on the bench last week, but Charlie Natai got injured, and then obviously they went with him and Frawley. But even in his cameo, I think there was a lot to like about him. He wanted to get on the ball. He was energetic. And obviously the challenge now is with Gary coming back this week is, does he make the 23? But look, at all he can do is keep doing what he's doing, and that battle for 10 in Leinster, the questions around what the pecking order is are still very much there, I think.
Right, so that is Bulls against Leinster at 3 o'clock Irish time, live on RT2 and RT Player, and both semi-finals as well, live commentary on RT Radio 1. Verdict time, fellas, right at the very end. What's our final going to be on Saturday the 22nd?
Munster-Leinster.
Go, sorry again?
Munster-Leinster.
Johnny?
Yeah, Munster-Leinster. Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I think a full house. 3 weeks ago, I was thinking Munster and Bulls, but I just not overly impressed with the Bulls anymore, and I think Leinster are going to do it. So full house of Munster and Leinster predictions. Get ready for a Glasgow Bulls final, everyone. That's where we're going to leave for this week. Johnny, thanks a million, and Bernard, thanks a million as always, and we'll speak to you all again next week. Enjoy the rugby this weekend.
Thank you.